are not around now. So Edwin, welcome back. I understand network must be a challenge. So we are just going to begin our lecture on audio technologies. This one is brief. The next one will be a little bit longer, but I understand you need to prepare. So let's just go through audio technologies. Sorry. So so far, we have seen quite a number of things, covered a number of topics. Today, we want to cover all the 4 technologies that we see here. And we start with audio technologies. Now, please also pay attention because some of these questions are there in the quiz and they may help you, they may support you. So why use audio technologies? Well, studies have shown, as Maya indicates, that some people learn better with narration when a multimedia lesson is spoken. So when somebody speaks, as opposed to reading, one may read something and may first of all lose concentration. But when somebody is listening to another, just like when we speak, we may find maybe more desirable, may pick more interest when we hear somebody speaking, especially if it is a friendly human voice. So studies have also shown that it does improve performance, especially in higher education. Reason being that usually older students pay more attention than younger students. It introduces flexibility. If you have an audio file, a student can take it and listen to it anytime, anywhere. So, and then also when we look at learners, our learners are different. We have some learners who learn best through visual, others through audio. So this mode, when you use it, considering that when you have a class, a big class, and you have different types of learners, once you adopt it, you realize that you're adopting, when you adopt all technologies, you realize that you're covering all the bases, depending on what kind of learners may be in your midst. Now, for both the teaching and learning process, audio technologies have benefits on both sides. If you're teaching, you are able to distribute your teaching material through audio. So you can make one audio file and actually distribute it to many. Look at situations where you are teaching, you may be teaching in more than one school or different groups of people. Take an example. At UMU, we have different campuses, and you find sometimes some programs cut across. For example, ICT or IT. You find you have IT students at Rubaga, at main campus, at Mbale, and Masaka, and even including Kabale. So imagine you made one audio file and distributed it to all. All students, this becomes more economical. Plus, you are teaching the same thing, you're giving the same material to all students. For teaching, it can be used to summarize your previous teaching. So one thing we must note, again, I will point it out over and over again, ICT is there to supplement, to facilitate, to support your everyday teaching activities. So it doesn't take away. When one makes an audio file, that does not mean that that person that is enough. No, a teacher can go ahead and teach their class, but can have an audio file that summarizes all that you've taught before and reminds the students of what has been taught. And all of these, I don't want to go through all of them and disrupt and take up too much of your reading time. So on the learning side, it allows the student to do repetitive or practical practice activities. So if it's an audio file that is giving instruction on something, it allows the student to continuously repeat it and better their skills if that audio file is aimed at that. Take an example if it's an audio file on language. It also helps develop a student's listening and speaking skills. The other important thing is a record for discussion in a class as evidence. Now, even here at UMU, there are situations where you need to demonstrate evidence that something happened, that a class happened. Take an example. If you are a part-time lecturer, you need to have evidence that you taught. If you have a recording of your class, you can use that as evidence of your teaching. So we want to go through some traditional audio media or technologies, because we don't want to say we are only going digital. So we started with audio cassettes. These are typical examples of tape recorders. This is old technology. I don't know if this can be found now, but this is technology that existed for me in the 80s. I remember seeing this kind of technology. Then we have broadcast audio. Especially during lockdown last year, we had the president suggesting that distance learning is done through radio. So it may be considered traditional in some contexts, but for some others, it is what is present, what is readily available. The telephone is another. It may seem a bit strange, but it can especially help for students who are homebound. That one can be supportive, although that would be expensive as well. Then we come to the digital audio media. We started with CD-ROMs. I think most of you have seen these CD-ROMs or DVDs, where somebody can store materials and distribute to their students. At one time in UMU, this mode was adopted, especially for distance learning students. Then we have the internet audio files. So I'm sure many people have seen MP3 files, or you've had people who are listening to music on their phones or their iPods and so on and so forth. Those files are usually in the format of MP3 or WAV files. It's possible to make an audio file and convert it into an MP3 or WAV file. And this can be uploaded, for example, on a site like Moodle and shared with a number of students. Another technology which may not be so common with which may not be so common in the Ugandan context, but can be used is podcasts. Now, podcasts, they have been used a lot by people in the entertainment industry, those who are celebrities. They create content. Certain people will discuss a topic and then upload it, and many people can come and see it. Now, in education, it's also being used, but this is mostly in the US and in Europe. It can't be used in Uganda. Actually, I saw a reporter, I think there was somebody in the media industry who's using podcasts to talk about current issues in Uganda. The same thing can be done by a teacher. However, this would also mean both the student and the teacher have access to the internet, but most of the sites are freely available. Now, some challenges with audio files, especially now that we are now talking about digital and online audio files, issues of copyrights. Now, let me just give you an example. We have this lesson today we are recording. After we record, I am going to request ICT to get this recording and put it in YouTube because there we have bigger space, and then we link it for you and you listen to it. Well, what happens if you download this and you decide to reuse it in your class? It's quite difficult to tell a student that please don't reuse it, because it's now seen now as UMU property or belonging to the Faculty of Education, or whereas for other cases, some recordings I make belong to the Faculty of Science as they are being taught there. So then in that case, what happens if you decide to download it and then you share it with somebody else who is not a student in UMU? So copyright issues there exist. And you can't really tell somebody, the student has to download. The fact is that they need to download the file and listen to it at their own time. But what happens if they give it to somebody else who is not a bona fide student of UMU? Then what then happens? What happens then is copyright issues arise. Then, of course, there we have technical issues. One of the main problems with using digital files is that maybe you, a student, I may create a video, and you, the student, you will download it, but you don't have the right software to read it. You don't have the software to read the format of the file or to listen to it. So those are technical issues that may exist. On this slide, we just have some applications you can use that are at your fingertips, which you can use. For example, Windows has a voice recorder. Those who have other operating systems, you can use those. Our phones, our simple Android phones, can also make those recordings. And then these audio applications can be uploaded on certain platforms like Moodle, Google Classroom, and shared with a number of students. So that was briefly about audio technologies. Do we have any discussion or any experience regarding audio technologies? Hello? Do we have any experience?
Hello, Doctor.
Yes, Edwin.
So your question was any discussion about using audio technology?
Yes. Your experience with it, any experience with it?
Maybe, Doctor. At one moment, I was teaching listening skills. So I recorded with the tape. I recorded a composition on the tape. Then I brought that tape and put it before the students.
Okay.
I timed them. Then later I.
Okay.
Substance. Yeah. So far,
Okay.
that's what I've come up, Doctor.
Okay. Okay. So this is not something new to you. You've seen it before. So there's quite a bit. There's quite a lot there that there are technologies. So I encourage you to explore these technologies. Let's just look at the remaining visual, audio, visual, and the file is just slightly bigger than the previous. Okay, so this, although the title says visual technologies, it covers more than this file, it covers more than that. So we are going to cover all the remaining technologies in this one. And we start with visual, yeah? So when we are talking about visual technologies, first we start with visual literacy. Because when we are looking at using visual technologies, we are focused on trying to get students to interpret an image. So two things that we are focused on: decoding and encoding. So in decoding, we are basically saying that in an image, there is a message in an image. And we are trying to get the students to decode that image. Yeah. Now, interestingly, this week I was privileged to be part of an online meeting. There was some data I collected with an organization here in Uganda called Palliative Care Association of Uganda. So I'm not a healthcare worker, but being a researcher, they gave me the data and they asked me to analyze it, which I did. But then we wanted to do more with the data. So we shared the data with some colleagues in the US, and these people went ahead and took it to a master's class whose focus was on visual analysis, basically doing the analysis with the intention of creating visual reporting, like really focusing on bringing meaning through generating graphs that provide meaning. And here they really did a good job. These particular students really did a good job. I remember one graph which we had separated. We had put two separate graphs, for example, showing how many private health facilities that participated and public health facilities that participated, but they decided to combine them and show the percentages. So the image was a lot more meaningful, that when one looks at it, when they decoded, they could tell the performance of private health facilities as opposed to public health facilities. Then the other one is in teaching encoding. This is rather creating an image which has meaning, which expresses some kind of meaning, which basically goes back to the example I was giving earlier. So in decoding, if you just look at this image here, for example, if a child sees this image, they would see a ride to the school, and they probably think of fun, everyone is smiling. I have a young nephew who normally listens to the song, The Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round. If he saw this, I'm sure that's what he would think immediately. But if an adult sees the same image, they may probably be thinking, oh, this car is about to crash. And for me, that's exactly what I was thinking. This car is about to tip over. So you see that the interpretation is different for different people. So the encoding part is, again, this is just repeating, creating visuals that can help you understand and develop aesthetics, the aesthetic talent. Why is visual literacy important? Because the world is becoming more visual. Yeah, it's becoming more and more visual. A lot of people depend now on appearance. Although this can be misleading, but this is the world we are living in today. Then the second reason is that just as we have people who learn better with listening, there are those who learn better with visual. So it's also good to have both aspects in your teaching process. So why add visuals to your instruction? Well, first, in all that we're doing is to make the class more interesting and also to be more effective with your delivery, that you are basically communicating effectively. So everything that we do is to improve that communication. So when we say provide concrete reference for an idea, that means you're basically giving a fuller picture to what it is you're speaking about as a teacher. Make the ideas the abstract ideas more concrete. If, let us say, we were talking about, if it is, let's say, an issue of cultural differences, especially in dress, then a picture may help. You may be surprised, for example, there are some students now who don't even know what cultural dress belongs to which tribe. So if you had an image This would explain things very well. I'll just give you an example. Me who comes from who is Mtoro, the dress code for Vatoro is very similar to that of Banyankole and Bachiga. And sometimes it is mistaken that what Banyankole wear is the same as what Vatoro wear, and yet actually they are very different. They are quite different. So even you may be surprised, some young students may not even know. So imagine if maybe it's a class on culture or cultural wear, and you had an image that this is what the Vatoro wear, this is Vatoro Banyoro wear, we are quite similar, this is what the Banyankole wear, this is what the Baganda wear, things like that. An image like that would help. To motivate learners comes to basically helping them pick interest in what is being talked about. And all of the others, you can go through this by yourself. So what value do visuals add to learning? It goes back to what we talked about earlier. You can go through this in your own free time. So if you're designing visuals, these are certain things you need to think about. One, arrangement. Depending on how your lecture is going or your class is going, arrange one image at a time. Don't throw all things to the students at once. Color matters. So for example, a PowerPoint slide, I'm going to link to you a video which gives direction on how to develop a PowerPoint slide or presentation slides. Issues like color matter a lot. If, for example, I was showing you this slide and my background was, let's say, huge patterns, you probably wouldn't have any appeal. You wouldn't want to look at that. The appeal would be lost here. A universal design is basically a design that we can all understand. By putting a white background, you're not distracted. Legibility, if you don't see the words that I'm saying, I've written here, then balance all goes back to color, appeal, and legibility. If you're using pictures, here's an example of a picture which is quite clear and precise. And anybody looking at this can tell this was a sunny day, most likely in a park. And anyone can tell that it's not an extremely hot day. It's quite cool just by looking at it. Pictures like this are just some types of visuals that we have. Then we have drawings and charts. So here is an example of a chart which shows the different stages of evolution. And this is a drawing which shows 3 students seated in front of computers. Very clear images that can be used. Then we have graphs. Now, graphs again in PowerPoint are extremely, when you look at the video that I made, it should help you a lot to decide on what types of graphs. A graph that is too busy shouldn't be presented in a presentation, but you can, if you have a complex one, then you can give it as a handout. Posters, this is an example of a poster. And then these are cartoon drawings. So cartoon drawings also give quite a good message. I am sure some of you, especially those who are politically active, have seen cartoons drawn by somebody called Spire. So Spire is a lecturer in Umu, and he's really good at those political satire drawings, artwork, and they really tell quite a story when you go through his work. We have some traditional visual technologies, however. We just talked about visual literacy, but let's talk about the technology itself. So we have the traditional visual technologies, the chalkboard, and all these ones. We're going to go through one at a time. So if we come back here, let me go through things like the chalkboard, the whiteboard, the flip charts. So this is an example of a chalkboard. This is a really old-fashioned chalkboard. I think most of us saw something, we have experienced this, and we still have them. Even at Umu, we still have something like this. And they're still quite effective. A lot of lecturers still use them, and they can be quite helpful. here we just have some importance of the Blackboard and how it can be used. I'll give you time to read, to go through it yourselves. We have the whiteboard. These are now quite popular. They are considered to be a little bit environmentally friendly because you're not using a dusty chalk, but it works the same way as a Blackboard. Then you have flashcards. I'm sure most of you have used them. We have flip charts. And then there are some teachers who choose to use models. So one example I saw of a model, one time I spent some time, there's a time I spent in the Netherlands. So every weekend I used to spend it with the Sisters of Mother Teresa. And one of the sisters used to give catechism classes to different age groups, young children, to really young children. So for the smallest group, I remember the time of Easter when we're coming to Holy Week, she made a model of Jerusalem and everywhere that Jesus went in the house. I think it was the house of Caiaphas where the Pharisees took him, then to Pontius Pilate, and then to eventually to Calvary. And she made a whole model. And these little children, some of them were even still in Pampers. She was showing them, teaching them. And when she would tell them, put the part where the cross is, and they knew where Calvary was, the house of Caiaphas, and all of that. And she did this using a model. We move further into the more modern technologies that we have seen. We have things like overhead projectors and televisions and document cameras. A document camera is it's the same category as projectors. So this is a slide projector. Most of us have seen it. This is an overhead projector. It's much older technology. Then we also have situations now where we use TVs. So as long as you have an HDMI cable, you can connect your laptop to a TV and project what it is that you're teaching. So that's an example. One of the key things I want to point out is PowerPoint. Again, I want to say I developed a separate video for that because PowerPoint really comes in the same category as projection, but also in multimedia. So let's come to multimedia technology. So when we look at multimedia technology, what exactly are we talking about? We're saying we are combining all the technologies we've been talking about, audio, visual, and audio-visual. You combine everything into a single platform. So take an example now, Moodle as it is combines everything. You'll find texts there, you'll find videos there, you'll find files, so many things are there that really pull up all the senses. So this multimedia technologies essentially allow us to use all the senses. Look at the pre-recorded lectures I gave you. Look at the way a PowerPoint now can allow me to point to a particular word just by using this pointer here, which is part and parcel of PowerPoint. This shows you that that PowerPoint is also part of the multimedia technology, and it appeals to every single sense. Now, once you're using platforms like these, platforms like PowerPoint, platforms like Google's Classroom, like Moodle, you're essentially appealing to all the senses of your student. Another typical example of multimedia technology is video conferencing. We are using video conferencing now. Zoom is a video conferencing technology. So it allows us to speak synchronously, as this word states. Synchronously simply means that you are getting what I'm saying in real time, and I can get what you think, you feel in real time, as opposed to Moodle, which is considered asynchronous, where I may, like, for example, I've now put up a quiz, and you may do it tomorrow, Sunday or Monday, whichever time you're free. That is referred to as asynchronous. So the internet itself is another multimedia technology. The entire internet as it is. So what is the internet? The internet, in its definition, is an interconnection of worldwide computers. So for example, you may go online and say, let me go search on educational technologies, and you'll get texts, you'll get videos on YouTube, you get so much. That is the internet bringing to you every single content on educational technologies. Email is another, because we can do quite a lot with email. I can send you an article, you may send me an audio file, and so many things can go back and forth between teacher and student. So the World Wide Web is the same, it comes together with the internet. I won't go through that much. Then we have our e-learning or e-learning platform. So here we have already talked about so many of them, and you've had your experiences with platforms like Moodle, Google Classroom. We didn't get a chance to look at it. And it also has its advantages. Then we also have the smart class. Now, most of us have not experienced the smart class, but this is an example of a smart class where you have an interactive board, and the students have access to the very same thing. Uganda hasn't reached this far, but we can always dream. So this is another typical example of a smart classroom. Then we have the smart boards or interactive boards, which allow students to interact with the smart board. I can link to you a video onto Moodle, which gives you an example of a smart board. So this is another interactive whiteboard. They also have the advantages. I'll leave those for you to look at. Then we have PowerPoint. So PowerPoint, like I said, I'm putting up a video which will guide you on how to produce really good PowerPoint presentations. However, I also showed you that you can do much more than just providing text. We have our LCD projectors, which are an advancement to LCD projectors. Most of us have seen them. This is what is on the market today. Then we have our other items, which we have mobile phones. I'm sure most of you are right now listening to me using your mobile phone. Something a bit bigger than a mobile phone would be tablets and iPads. So these give a wider screen, but they're a little bit wider screen than a mobile phone. So I thank you for listening. Do we have any question?
Hello, Doctor.
Yes, please, Edwin.
Hello, Doctor. Thank you for handling us very well. Now,
yes,
I'm asking now, so your take. The examine the final.
The final. Sorry, you're breaking.
Hello, Doctor.
Yes, Edwin. Now I can hear you.
So, Doctor, are you now getting me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Yes. So I was asking now, next week it will be. So I was an assessment next week.
Yes, I will put it up.
On that day. I receive it before.
I'll give it to you even before, and I'll give you about a week, a week or a week and a half to do it. It will be based on an article, and of course, it's a written paper.
Okay, Doctor.
Yes. But please make sure you do the
Doctor, I would love to thank you much very well.
Thank you too. Thank you for, especially you and Dominic, you've been very faithful in attending the classes.
Okay, Doctor.
Okay. Please make sure you tell all your colleagues to do the quiz. It's not very difficult. And it gives you 2 attempts. In case the first attempt doesn't work out well, you can try the second attempt.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I thank you so much for listening. I don't know if Dominic, you have any question?
He has sent an appreciating message.
Okay.
He has been using only audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So